What would you do if the person you're in love with is still entangled with his ex-wife? Today we're going to find out. I'm Leah Carey, relationship and intimacy coach, and we're here to talk about the good, the bad, and the downright terrible advice given by Dear Abby. Do you swear by Dear Abby or at Dear Abby? Let's get into it. Cinderfella writes, Dear Abby, I am a gay man who has been having an affair with a married man for the last 3 years. They've been separated for a year, but no one has filed for divorce. I know he wants a future with me, but I'm not sure if he's brave enough to take the next step. His wife is still praying the gay away and still thinks the marriage can work. She sends him biblical verses and worship songs regularly. He's always been gay, but because of how he was raised and his religious upbringing, he felt he had to live a fake life. Although his family isn't accepting, my family is, and they've met him. My question is, how long do I wait? I don't want to waste my life away waiting on someone else to determine my future. Abby responds, You stated that your lover is separated from his wife. One would think that after a year on his own, he would have become more comfortable about his sexual orientation. The time has come to tell him that unless he's willing to seek counseling from a licensed therapist who can help him figure out who he is and who he wants to be, you'll have to move on. Living in limbo the way you are is unhealthy for you and him. I hope your next relationship, if there has to be one, will be with an out gay man who is unattached and available. I don't know if I would classify today's letter as terrible advice by Dear Abby, but I would call it significantly missing the mark. This is not a question about a closeted gay man. What she's missing is purity culture. This is a man who is gay and grew up in purity culture, and that is an entirely different ball of wax. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with purity culture, it is a creation of the evangelical Christian movement that says basically that women are their father's property until they are handed off and then they become the property of their husband. It is extremely heterocentric, and it assumes that you will not have had any kind of intimate contact with somebody of the opposite sex before marriage. This includes the person who you're going to marry. And depending on how strict the particular group or family is, maybe you haven't even kissed the person before you get married. Maybe you haven't even touched each other's hands. So there's no opportunity in that sort of pre-marriage time to discover if you're actually intimately compatible with your partner. Now, Cinderfella includes that his boyfriend has always known that he was gay, but that actually is not true for everybody. There are lots of cases of people who got married thinking that they were going to have the perfect fairy tale and then discovered once they were committed to a marriage they couldn't easily get out of that they weren't entirely hetero. So this creates a lot of inner turmoil for people who are caught in purity culture and who don't feel entirely straight. Because purity culture also tells you that if you're gay or if you have any type of gay interaction, that's a sin. And you're going to burn in the fires of hell for all eternity. It's a pretty significant transgression as far as they're concerned. So growing up in this culture that tells you that if you act on who you are, you will be a sinner who will burn in the fires of hell, and that you'll be cut off by everyone who loves you, everyone who you love, because generally it's a pretty insulated community, and that there will be nothing for you in the sinful outer world. It is incredibly scary for people who have grown up in purity culture to leave so that they can explore their potential queerness. This is a level of trauma that can take a really long time to unwind. That's why I say that Dear Abby has completely missed the mark when she says a year should be long enough for him to figure out who he wants to be. No, if you have spent 20, 30, 40, 50 years, we have no idea how old this person is. If you have spent decades steeped in the idea that acting on your desires is going to lead you to lose everything in this life and then burn for all eternity, there's not a lot of positive incentive for you to follow that. Meanwhile, there's all this feeling inside that says, I would give anything to follow that. And so it sets up this incredibly fertile ground for complete self-loathing. This feeling of, I so want this thing, and that makes me a terrible person. I shouldn't want it. If I want it, I am going to be cut off. There are a lot of other problems with purity culture as well. It's not just the woman only being property of the closest man and gay people are bad. There are all sorts of really terrible messages about how once you've kissed someone or once you've had intimacy with someone, you are used up, you're damaged goods. So this man who is in a heterosexual, church-approved marriage is probably facing a whole lot of internal resistance at the idea of leaving and potentially being seen as used up, as damaged goods. Not only is he afraid that other people will see him that way, he will see himself that way. So there's yet another level of why he's maybe not going to want to leave this safe, protected space, even though his soul yearns to. Now let's add on top of that, that his wife is sending him all this material, trying to get him to stay. And it's not just the like, if you come back, I'll do better kind of thing that we would maybe see in a more traditional but less religious context. It's material that is going to, at a deep level, resonate with everything that he has ever believed. It's going to continue to cement the idea that if he leaves, he is sinful. He is going to be rejected by not only the people he loves, but by God himself. Add on top of that, yet another layer that even though he's gay and has been for a long time, chances are pretty good that he has a lot of affection for his wife. And so he's going to reject her, causing her whatever type of trauma and pain that she has told him she will have. Plus, as a divorced woman, she's now going to be seen as used up, damaged goods. So he's not only inflicting pain and trauma on himself, he's facing the likelihood of inflicting pain and trauma on somebody who he genuinely cares about and loves. The thing that I do agree with Abby about is that this man needs support. He needs somebody from the outside who doesn't have a particular horse in this race to come in and help him sort through his feelings, help him to really shore up his understanding of himself as a capable person who hasn't done anything wrong in having these feelings. There are therapists and there are coaches like me who specialize in helping people to deconstruct from purity culture, to separate themselves from that way of living that feels like everything I do, every choice that I make needs to be in alignment with this higher presence, that if I do something that falls out of line, then I'm going to be in trouble. Now, the reason that I specialize in this territory is because I came from this kind of home. Now, I didn't come from purity culture specifically, but I had a father who had narcissistic tendencies that I have come to realize made our little family look a lot like a cult of three people. My dad was the charismatic cult leader. My mom was the sort of normie who wandered in and fell under his spell. And I was the child who was born into the cult, never knowing anything different. So it has taken me decades to deconstruct from all of the sort of family cult beliefs and behaviors. This ends up looking a lot like deconstruction from purity culture and from other high control and high demand childhoods. What I would want to be extraordinarily careful about when suggesting to this man that he get some support in processing is that he not go to a church affiliated therapist or counselor or coach, because those people are deeply invested in purity culture and are going to direct him back into the fold. They're going to reinforce these ideas that he's sinful and he just needs to stop thinking about it and he can pray the gay away, and if he does enough men's retreats, etc. He needs support from somebody who is not deeply entrenched in that community and is going to help him to figure out what he wants, as opposed to telling him what he wants or what he should want. As for the letter writer, if I were working with Cinderfella, here's what I would want to talk about. Not sort of what is the end date that is reasonable for him to wait, but how long does he want to wait? How long is he willing to wait? Because there is no sort of culturally approved or universe approved length of time. Some people might be willing to wait weeks or months. He has already waited 3 years. There are some people who might be willing to wait decades and may be happy with that choice. But if you tell somebody who's willing to wait weeks that they should wait years, or you tell somebody who's willing to wait decades that they should be willing to wait weeks, you are completely, once again, just stripping away their autonomy to decide what is right for them. And purity culture is all about stripping away autonomy. So I would want to start with what feels right, Cinderfella, to you. Do you feel like 3 years is about as long as you have in you and you're starting to get restless? I would suggest, in fact, that writing this letter is a sign that there might be some restlessness starting to happen. Although it's also possible that he really wants to hold in there and he's getting messages from other people that he shouldn't stick around. And so he's trying to get clarity that what he wants to stay is okay. And I'm going to say that if you want to stay, it's okay, regardless of how long. The next question is, as long as you are in this waiting period, you're sort of in a return on investment kind of dynamic where you're hoping that putting in this time of waiting is going to result in him joining you and becoming a family. So for as long as that return on investment feels positive, great. But at what point do you start moving into the dissatisfaction of what I'm going to call the sunk cost fallacy, which is the idea that once you've put a lot of time or money into something, you don't want to leave it because then you'll have lost or wasted all of that time or money. So if you feel like the return on investment of continuing to wait for another 6 months or a year or 2 years, if you get what you're hoping for out of it, if you feel like that's still positive, great. But at what point do you start to feel like you're staying just because you can't leave and lose everything you've put in? As soon as it starts moving over into that feeling of, I can't leave because I've already put so much in, that is a warning sign that this is no longer healthy for you. And you may be better off cutting ties and moving forward on your own. So I've got some resources. Before I do that, I hope that if this has been helpful to you, you will hit the like button. Now, for those of you who are moving out of purity culture, I have some things on my website that are going to be great for you. The first is ed for purity culture dropouts. Because this ed that you got was so deeply wrong, this document goes through lots of different ideas and myths that you probably heard and gives you real information. So this is going to be sort of the said that you didn't get because you were being taught purity culture. Now, if you are in the process of separating from purity culture and thinking, I just want to go out and have all the fun, but you're finding yourself still caught up, similar to how Cinderfella is, I have a freedom from purity service where it's sort of like a coaching session, but we do it by sending each other videos, and it's much less expensive than diving into a full session. So if that's of interest to you, go check out Freedom from Purity. And those links are in the episode description. So now I'd love to hear from you. Here's the question of the week. How long would you be willing to wait for the person who you think is the love of your life? How long do you think is a reasonable return on investment before you start falling into sunk cost fallacy? Leave a comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts. And remember, you are worthy of love, and I'm going to help you get there, one conversation at a time.